Ever since I was a wee babe, I've known exactly what I want my superpower to be. I want to have the gift of telepathically conveying information, telepathic communication, except for with touch, because I think with touch will solve a lot of the consent issues around telepathic communication. But yeah, being able to convey to someone, like when they ask you, oh, how was your day? You could just tap them and be like, this is how it was. And they would understand everything about it, including all of the little micro feelings that go unnoticed by so many people when you're telling a story. That is what I want my superpower to be. And I say that as a person with a debilitated Mercury placement who is tired of being misunderstood at every turn. Just give me the telepathy! Oh, hey, Cosmic Cuties. It is your friendo, the Lady Ms. Vagina Jenkins. And yes, we are, in fact, talking about debilitated planets this week. Planets in their fall, planets in their detriment, planets that are not at home and they are a little uncomfortable about it. Oh, before we go any further, I have to remind you, make sure that you are subscribed. Also, make sure that you consider becoming a member of this channel. Membership in this channel starts at $3.99 a month, and you get really cool perks like custom emojis and loyalty badges, and the greatest perk of all, getting to support your favorite Black queer autistic creator. Subscribe, become a channel member, or just comment and like my videos when you see them. Those are all ways to support me, and they are all very much appreciated. Okay, let's get into it. You know, early in my YouTube journey, before I got really consistent and was contemplating like what would my voice on YouTube be like, what would I talk about, that kind of thing, I was inspired by this YouTuber on here called Astro. And he had a series about all the different astrology placements and how they play out like in the different houses and the different signs, that kind of thing. Anyway, one of his videos specifically was about Mercury being in Pisces, where it is uncomfortable. Mercury is both in its detriment and in its fall in the sign of Pisces. And he talked about that particular placement, but he also talked about his journey with that particular placement. And it absolutely inspired me to think that despite all of my trauma, experiencing life as a person with Mercury in Pisces, that I too could be a YouTube personality. And so I started making my videos, and then he immediately stopped making his videos. And now I'm wondering if Mercury in Pisces is like one of those who has the talking stick kinds of things. Is only one of us allowed to use the brain cell at once? I'm sorry, Astro, that it's my turn. I'll give it back later at some point. So just to review concepts for a second, what this video is talking about is the concept of planetary dignities, that each one of the planets has a home sign. You know, the planet rules this particular sign, and that's its home, its domicile. But there's also places where this planet might feel exalted, as if they were an honored guest. And there are places where this planet might feel in its fall, the absolute opposite of exaltation, where it feels like it is being disrespected, or a planet being in its detriment, the opposite of its home, where it feels intensely comfortable. It's just a place where it might feel a little uncomfortable. And that's how astrologers typically will discuss the concept of planetary dignities, you know, a place where a planet can do its job most efficiently versus not being able to do its job so efficiently. And I have said that sentence over and over and over again so many times, and it's only very recently that I thought, planets having jobs. That sounds like the work of internalized capitalism. So yeah, I've been thinking about how I might talk about this for a few weeks now. And I think to me, it's not about, I'll keep the part about its task or its job, but I don't think I want to keep the part about efficiency, because I feel like efficiency is just a stone's throw down the road from professionalism, which we know is a tenet of white supremacy culture. So yeah, what would it be like instead of talking about planets working efficiently, talk about different approaches to the same job? So for example, with Mercury, perhaps its task, its job, the thing that it most wants us to accomplish is somehow taking information and applying it practically to improve our lives. And that's why I feel like, yes, it makes lots of sense that Mercury could be exalted in Virgo. It also makes a lot of sense that Mercury could find its home, its domicile, in both Virgo and in Gemini. I think Gemini has the we're gathering information part really down, but then Virgo takes it a little bit further with we are gathering information for practical application. But then as it pertains to Mercury being in detriment or in fall, well, in detriment in Sagittarius and Pisces, let's break that down. If Mercury is about us gathering information and applying it practically, how does it need to then approach that job in a unique and special way, and getting creative as it manifests in Sagittarius or in Pisces? For both of those signs, the question becomes, how expansive does this information need to be? I'm going to make sure that I insert this table that I am working from of the planetary dignities. So even though the concept of planetary dignity is more of a traditional or Hellenistic concept in astrology, this table does look at the three outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and tries to find planetary dignity for them. I would encourage you to look at those three planets in this table, and I would encourage you to engage in a thought experiment. Why do you think that they're each designated in this way? What does it mean that Pluto could find a home in Scorpio? What are the qualities of Scorpio that give Pluto a home? And then considering that in each one of these columns, does it make sense to you? Why does it make sense to you? And how does that thought experiment potentially further your understanding of both the planets and those signs? Just as a thought experiment. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, we know that domicile is this most comfortable place for the planet to accomplish its work. But is it necessarily the most efficient? To me, the word efficient in this construct that we are creating about planetary dignities feels too akin to professionalism, which we know is the language of like white supremacy. So yeah, can we say that accomplishing your task in a more aligned fashion versus a more intuitively led fashion could be a thing here? I don't know. Let's find some language for it. I'm still thinking about it all myself. But yes, Mercury being at home in Gemini and Virgo, so in domicile, that tells me a lot about Mercury's task and wanting to collect information, Gemini, and then in the Virgo exaltation of Mercury, is it about not only collecting information, but applying it practically to somehow improve ourselves or the situation around us? I think that's what finding Mercury at home and in exaltation in Gemini and Virgo tell me. Please comment below. Let me know what I might be missing. I'm really curious about your take, your voice on this. But yeah, if that's what we're talking about when we're talking about Mercury finding a home or a place of exaltation, both Gemini and Virgo experiences of Mercury, then the opposite of that, being in detriment and in fall in Pisces, what are we talking about there? Instead of inefficiency working in those signs, can we talk about how maybe Virgo doesn't necessarily need an expansion or a synthesizing of this information, but rather just for us to collect data and not necessarily need to synthesize it into a full-on philosophy. That's one thing that Mercury in Sagittarius is really good at. Seems to me that Mercury might be more focused strictly on data points instead of like the synthesis of a whole philosophy or worldview based on data points. That Mercury does not necessarily need us to expand our communications horizons, but to rather continue collecting data points and using them in more concrete and finite ways in practical real-world solutions. Would make sense that then Mercury finds itself in its fall, its worst possible position, when it finds itself in Pisces, which is about going even beyond expansion to a place of infinite connection. It's like Mercury in Sagittarius is the, let's take all this information and expand our mind and our worldview with it. And then Pisces is like, yes, and once we're fully expanded, we will all know everything together, and there will be no boundaries between the information and the conversations that we can share with each other just by a simple telepathic tap. And while Sagittarius and Pisces Mercury are having this conversation, Mercury in Virgo and in Gemini is just like, I just wanted you to read the newspaper. I didn't necessarily want to change your whole worldview. And I know that's a really long and drawn out example, but I wanted to offer it up because to me, once again, these planets that are debilitated, they are either in detriment or in fall in your chart. They are not about not being able to work as efficiently, but they really are about using the tools of that particular sign and understanding that communication and self-expression can be unique to the individual. And this just goes back to the one of the two things that I'm always saying. One, be as specific as you possibly can when you're searching for an astrologer, and two, looking at your chart as a whole thing, as a holistic system, because it's not just about your Mercury placement. Yes, we understand that for me, my Mercury in Pisces can bring about experiences of feeling misunderstood, of trying to convey information intuitively that actually needs to be spoken with the voice box. That's one of the ways in which I find myself really confused as a Mercury Pisces. But that I have a whole chart. So yes, I have a Mercury in Pisces, and that's taking place in the 4th house. But in the 3rd house, I have Aquarius, and I have a planetary helper of Mars being in Aquarius that can help me with my communication strategies in a completely different way. There's also looking to the sign across the hall to understand how you can sort of work with any given planetary placement. So I have Mercury in Pisces, and across the hall, I've got some midheaven and Virgo energy. How can I channel that energy to help me as I'm trying to get my message across? Which is why you'll see so many Virgo indicators here on my channel. These plants, my constant wearing of green, the braids that I keep in my hair, it's all tailored to the idea of serving a little bit more Virgo realness to balance out the Pisces Mercury that is ever present. Even this playlist name, Time for Queer Astrology, is rooted in Virgo kinds of ideals and values. I say all that to say that just because you have a debilitated planet does not mean that you are cursed to somehow not have success in that realm. I have a Mercury in its fall in Pisces, and it to me just means finding a unique solution to communications issues. I will also add that I have a debilitated Venus. So why is it that I'm even an artist? How is that possible? I have an Aries Venus. Venus is in its detriment in Aries. It would much prefer being across the hall in Libra, or even better in Taurus, or even bestest in Pisces. And I don't have any of those placements. So how can I even be an artist when Venus, the planet of beauty, art, creative self-expression, is in detriment in my chart? Does that mean that I'm cursed forever to never be able to create anything? Absolutely not. I have been a creative my whole life, and the way that I show up for my creativity is unique. The way that I show up for my creativity is unique and special and based on my particular chart. I also have Chiron sitting there next to my Venus in Aries, and so much of my creativity is about healing my childhood wounds. And I try and remember the principles of fire element-led creativity, which is about following one's passions and the ideas that light you up, that give you that spark, that make you excited and passionate. And I think about the houses where Venus might find accidental joy, like the 2nd house or the 11th house, because there's associations with Taurus and Libra respectively. And I think about how my 2nd house is rooted in Capricorn energy. So what about my arts practice, while being led by fiery passions, is also rooted in values around what are traditions and what are the people who came before me that exercise those artistic and cultural traditions, and how can I pull from that as part of my arts practice? I hope that I've made my point. I wish that I could just tap you and make my point very, very clearly. But yeah, just generally speaking, I want to remind you that planets that are in detriment or in their fall are not a curse. They are an invitation to understand that particular task, whatever task or lesson that that planet is trying to teach, through a new and unique lens made solely by understanding the holistic nature of your chart and how all these planets are interacting with each other through your chart. You've got the power. And speaking of power, tell me about your superpower in the comments below. And by that, I mean, do you have any planets that are in detriment in fall that you have found that you've had to work with in a really unique way? And how have they become your superpower? Tell me about it in the comments. Inspire us. Let other people with those same placements know that it is not a curse and it is not something to be worried about, but something to rather embrace your uniqueness around. That part. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for supporting this channel, and of course, as always, thank you for making time for queer astrology. Bye.